Now, since hard lockdowns began nearly 3 years ago, many workers have become accustomed to the comfort of working from home. But this may soon come to an end due to Eskom's worsening rolling blackouts. Companies are losing productivity as employees battle to work without power. Let's discuss this now with labor law expert Osborne Molatudi, just to find out what this would all mean. What are the implications? Osborne, good afternoon. Welcome to today, and thank you very much for your time. I mean, just last year, I guess there was a lot of excitement about this new way of work, the hybrid way of work. It looks like it's succeeding elsewhere in the world, and South African organizations had embraced it. But the impact of load shedding might reverse that.
Good afternoon, Braden, and good afternoon to your viewers. Indeed, there was an excitement when most companies and employees across the board were becoming comfortable with its introduction. However, none of them did anticipate that at some point in time, there may be, in inverted commas, another pandemic in the form of load shedding. And on a light note, what forced employees to vacate their offices, it's now in turn forcing employees to return to the office. That is, from COVID-19, we now have load shedding that forces us to go back to office. And of course, there are operational reasons for this, because employers employ employees in order to make money, in order to ensure productivity, in order to ensure that work continues, and in order to ensure that employees earn and deserve the salaries, the full salaries that they earn by doing a full-day job. Now, in a situation where you have load shedding that can start from stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and now we are told that it can move up to stage 5, stage 6, no doubt that will have a major impact insofar as the ability by employees to execute their tasks and responsibilities are concerned.
Now, from a labor perspective, I mean, employees who can work in a hybrid fashion, what leeway would they have if the employer said, listen, with these power issues, I've got alternative power sources. I've got a generator in my place. I've got a very strong Wi-Fi connectivity for our online work. And I'm also putting up or installing solar panels and stuff. So we were always on here in the office. I need you here now all the time. Meanwhile, people have got workers, employees have got into a routine where they can manage their days a little bit better because of the hybrid model. What leeway can they have to convince their employer that, listen, can we still carry on with this hybrid model?
The leeway is through engagement, through consultation, because no employer will wake up one morning and say, next week I want everyone to be back at the office. A prudent employer will always engage employees, their representatives, you name it, by changing a work practice that has been in place during the COVID-19 lockdown. And it's during this engagement that employees can indicate various alternatives in order to, to demonstrate that they can be productive, notwithstanding load shedding. However, what we know is that other factors play a role here, Braden. Your cost of petrol, it has just been announced that the petrol is going to go again in diesel. So some employees were saving quite a lot by working from home. And in relation to inconvenience on our roads, now that there is load shedding that even affects the traffic lights, they may also argue that, look, we will be stuck for hours before we even reach offices. Please allow us to continue working from home. So on that basis, one would advise employers to rather establish, working committees to work on best mechanisms to alleviate the situation. This, keep in mind that at the same time, there are employees who use the opportunity to moonlight or to do what you call a side hustle, while at the same time compromising, their contractual obligation to render a full service to the employer. Just to give you an example, when power comes back after hours, only dedicated employees will say, look, there was no power during my working hours. Therefore, as a sign of dedication, let me continue doing my work. Let me finish the report that I'm required to do so that I can submit to my line manager, to my employer, etc. It's only in those exceptional circumstances that we'll find that category of employees.
Yeah, I was just wondering as you were talking here. Last week I interviewed an agriculture organization after the death of the 8 farm workers in the Northern Cape due to the heat wave. And one of the suggestions they were making for farmers to consider is changing the working hours to suit the time of the day when there's less heat. Rather than working out there in the fields during midday, for example, when it's very hot, maybe they could work early morning, stop work, and then resume in the afternoon. Could in this scenario, in the urban setting, in the organizations where it's possible, employees said, I will log on and be available from this hour to that hour when I've got power, and then I'll relog again. Or that's not feasible at all.
These are some of the aspects that must be dealt with during engagement. I mean, for your information, and I did live in the Middle East for 2.5 years. There's a time between April and August, for that matter, when it's extremely hot, in Dubai in particular, that workers are not allowed to be on site after midday. No employer is allowed to have workers on site. So it's something that employers elsewhere, including South Africa, can look into. But coming to the real issue as to why employers would want their workers to return to offices, it's mostly driven by the desire to ensure productivity and also to test whether employees are dedicated. In the example that we have just given, yes, it is possible that the employees can renegotiate to say, we will work around the load shedding schedules, and bear in mind that the schedules differ from suburb to suburb, from area to area. So you could imagine it can be a mammoth task for both HR and payroll to manage that aspect. Yeah. The other angle, of course, Braden, so that we don't forget it, is the impact of refusing to return to office. If that request came from the employer in the form of an instruction or a request, the employee runs the risk of being dismissed, or let alone being declared absence without leave, or let alone being declared having deserted his or her workplace and therefore not getting paid. So employees will be well advised not just to deny or refuse to return to office for no apparent reason. This, bear in mind, that is post-COVID-19, and therefore one would be hesitant to even continue citing side effects or all other illnesses associated with the pandemic to say, I still have these comorbidities, therefore I cannot return to office. So there has to be a careful balance between that which we say no, vis-a-vis the employer's desire to ensure productivity in the workplace.
So the onus will be on the employee to engage with the employer and submit the proof that backs their argument for continuing with a hybrid way of working.
Yes, once the employer initiates the process, I mean, like I said, no employer will wake up one morning and simply say, dear employees, I now want all of you to return to office by Monday, the 6th of February. The employer would, in such instance, issue an engagement notice to say, look, because of operational requirements, we are now forced to ask some or all of you to return to office, and even break it down. And also invite the employees to sort of consider being part of a working committee to work out this for the benefit of both employers and employees. One other aspect, Braden, that I want to highlight is that where working from home was made a term and condition of employment, unfortunately, that cannot be unilaterally changed without the consent of the employee. But one would imagine that employers will still have a fallback in the form of such words such as you will be required to work at a place or such other place as may be determined by your employer from time to time. And the employer may use that as a leeway to unilaterally force employees to return to work. But that doesn't mean employees will be without remedies if an employer proceeds to implement the return to office unilaterally without even obtaining their consent.